Okay, Turkey Day is behind us. The holidays are upon us, and we got a nice gift yesterday, all of us Eagles fans. Eagles taking down the Ravens 24-19. Ken Dunek and Mark Eckel, the Bird Brains with Ken and Mark. Thanks for being with us to talk about another exciting Eagles win. My partner Mark Eckel is standing by, and I've actually got a question for you, Mark. I'm going to talk about a shocking aspect of yesterday's game.
Okay.
And then a mildly surprising aspect of yesterday's game. You're a very smart guy, and a lot of times you come up with this stuff. I'm going to give you a second to think about it. And then we're going to introduce a really special guest to me, a guy I've known for, my goodness, 44 years. Hard to believe, but we go way back, ex-Eagles wide receiver. We're going to talk to him in a second, give him a proper introduction. Let me attend to some bookkeeping items here first. We're recording this podcast at Sweet Recording Studios in Mount Laurel. If you want to do a podcast, it's a great place to do it. Contact Joe Gangemi at sweetrecording.com, and he will take care of you. This podcast is also sponsored by Gateway Mortgage. Chris Wilhelm, great friend, great Eagles fan. Contact Chris for your mortgage needs. That's 856-810-1222. Chris Wilhelm, Gateway Mortgage, 856-810-1222. And Scott, you ought to jump on this. We're doing an Eagles cruise on April 12th to the 19th. Joe will put the slide up top. The promo code is Dunek if you want $300 off of your cabin. Some people that you'll recognize like Gary Cobb, Vince Papale, Byron Evans, and others will be on that cruise. And if you can join us on April 12th, we'd love to have you. And then finally, the JerseyMan Magazine holiday party is this Thursday, the 5th. If you'd like to attend, please email me, Ken at JerseyManMagazine.com. We have a great time celebrating the holidays, and we would love to see you there. Okay, Mark, let's talk briefly about the game, then I want to introduce our special guest.
Well, you had these questions for me.
I do. I'll get to that in a second. Give me your general synopsis of what you saw yesterday.
I saw a team that is rolling right now. I mean, I'll be honest. Going into the game, I didn't bet it. Well, I did make a bet that came through in the last seconds. I'll tell you that later. I didn't bet the game, but if I had to, because I just thought it was too tough. When the game's that good, yeah. I would have taken Baltimore. I just thought Baltimore was the more desperate team. Mm-hmm. They were home. I thought the Eagles were due for a clunker somewhere along the line, but and when they started 9-0, I said to myself, damn, I probably should have bet this game. Baltimore's going to roll them. But then the Eagles, you know what I think? A very unsung hero in this game was, who I thought was, and no one ever talks about this kind of guy anyway, but
who's that?
Punter. The Eagles punter, he flipped the field.
Braden Mann he's having an unbelievable season. Unbelievable. He averaged 48 yards in the cold yesterday.
Yes, but that one, when they were down 9-0. Baltimore stopped them again, and he punted deep. He punted them down to the 2 or something, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And then the Eagles defense held. They got the ball back in good field position. They scored. Then the game was a different game after that. Because early on, first quarter looked like, this is going to be one of them games.
Same old slow Eagles start. Happens almost every week. They're just lethargic at the beginning.
But they're lucky that a lot of times the other team doesn't. And they're not playing a Baltimore. You can come back against Cleveland. You can come back against Jacksonville. Baltimore, usually I thought, okay, Baltimore gets them down 9-0. We're going to see a lot of Derrick Henry just, killing it a little bit now. Right. But no, great win. The defense played great after that first quarter. The offense finally got going. And like I said, I thought the punter had a big – and again, I'm not one to, go ahead of the way to praise punters, but he had a great game and turned the game around.
Very good. Well, I'm going to bring in our guest right now. This is a guy that I've known from my rookie year with the Eagles in 1980. Spent a lot of time together. Actually lived together at his home in Marlton, New Jersey for a bit. In 1981, he went on to play for the San Diego Chargers after his Eagles career. Then he joined the Philadelphia Stars for 3 great seasons. My good friend from Penn State, wide receiver Scott Fitzkee. Scott, welcome to the Bird Brains. How are you?
Hey, Ken. Nice to be on. Nice to see you and talk to you.
Yeah, we get together occasionally at alumni events. We saw each other at the Dick Vermeil Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And Scott, who actually has a very successful commercial roofing business, lives in Baltimore now. I believe you live in Baltimore, right, Scott?
I'm north of Baltimore. It'd be considered I'm between Baltimore and the Pennsylvania line. Yeah, so
Now you're a York, Pennsylvania guy, right? Isn't that's your hometown?
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm from Red Lion, Pennsylvania.
So growing up, were you kind of a Baltimore Colts fan at that time, or were you Eagles, or what was going on
Yeah,
there?
yeah. As a young one, young sports fan, we were Baltimore Colts. We were Baltimore Orioles. Yeah, so we were Baltimore. You know, it was an hour to get to the stadium, and of course, I was a junior Oriole and a junior Colt and all that as a little one.
Well, you must have been pretty excited at some of those cocktail parties we used to go to when we were at the Baltimore Stars. That Brooks Robinson was there, and all those people. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah. There's some great times. I'll tell you what. I know we're Eagles people right now, but some of the old days of the Philadelphia Stars are pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, I was in camp with the Colts in '82 and got to know a little bit about that culture down there, and it's a crying shame that team was ripped from that city because that fan base and that marching band was just unbelievable. I had just signed a contract there, and I showed up at minicamp, and they threw me a birthday party. There was hundreds of people there. I didn't even know anybody, and they had a birthday party for him. Know what was going on with that. But anyway, I had mentioned to Mark the shocking aspect of yesterday's game. Can anybody guess what I was just totally blown away by? Never in a million years did I think this could happen.
That Justin Tucker would miss 2 field goals in an extra
That's
point.
a very good point. But
But that's been happening a lot lately.
It has. It has. A lot of kickers are struggling. But so my shocking revelation about yesterday's game was we were a more physical team than the Baltimore Ravens. And I never thought in a million years that would happen. This is the regime of Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs and Nagata and all these great defensive players that are known for their physicality. And this Baltimore team, it was really good against the rush. They were number 2 in the NFL against the rush. And we just pounded the football. We outmanned them on both sides of the ball. Scott, I'll start with you. Were you surprised by that? I mean, you follow both teams pretty closely.
I was a little bit. I watched the game. Of course, being in Baltimore, all my friends and neighbors are Ravens fan. My family is an Eagles fan, obviously, so we were pretty excited about it. I thought after the first quarter, after the 9-0 deal, I thought we out physical both offense and defense. We just shut down Henry. I mean, the defense played great and shut down Henry, and I wasn't surprised. The Ravens are a little inconsistent at times, and the Birds I think they're on a roll. They're playing very well, and now in the next 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, if they can keep it up, they're going to have a chance to continue on.
Absolutely. Mark, were you surprised that the Eagles were a more physical team yesterday than the Ravens?
That's what they've been doing.
But we're talking about the Ravens here now. We're talking
about,
they got the swagger, they got, the bruise, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, I didn't think the Ravens were soft. I just thought the Eagles, but I agree that the Eagles were more physical. It was a physical game. It was a lot. There were some hits on both sides. I mean, I thought the big hit was the kid, Cooper DeJean.
Took down Derrick Henry like a sack of potatoes.
I mean, that was like a Brian Dawkins kind of hit.
I'll tell you what, he is one good player, isn't he? Holy heck. I knew and my son's a big fan, and when they drafted him, he was just all excited. But that tackle on Henry was just like 100%, man. He couldn't do any better than that.
Oh, Scott, from being in that situation, sometimes, and it was a great hit, don't get me wrong, but, when a player turns and you can catch him right at the right angle, which I think he did, it kind of helped. It was a little more dramatic than what it looked, but it was still a great takedown of a great player. How about the surprising aspect of the game? Mark, you and I talk about this almost every week, and there's something happened in the first half that I was mildly surprised at. It has to do with our buddy Nick Sirianni.
I was going to say Nick didn't screw up.
No, well, what Nick didn't do is he didn't chase the points. He had a chance to go up for 6, and then he went up by 5 by kicking the extra point in the second quarter. And I'm sitting there telling my dog he's going to go for 2. He goes for 2 here all the time, and of course, he makes me look bad in front of my girls.
I tell you, something happened, Ken. Something happened.
You know what? He's evolving. He's getting better. He's listening
told
to he's either listening to the critics or listening to his boss that says, you better stop doing this stuff. But he is getting better. The last 3 or 4 weeks, he hasn't done any of this crazy stuff.
Since the big blow up, where everything, when it looked, even though he won the game, everybody wanted him fired, right?
When they had to do the hostage video the next day, and he looked like, he was,
when he brought the kids, and since then, and I don't know Nick well enough, but something happened. Like you said, maybe Jeffrey or Howie called him in and said, "All right, listen, Nick, we love you, but you got to stop this nonsense." Mm-hmm. We do love our fans. Our fans are the ones that spend the money. We got to, and the critics. I mean, he was getting criticized not just in Philly, national.
No, national.
Right. NFL Network. Everybody was calling him. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's giving points away. He was getting killed.
Yeah.
I mean, nationally, he was getting killed. So something got either himself. He said, "All right, maybe I am getting a little too carried away here. I got it," because he hasn't made a mistake. In my opinion, he has not made a mistake in the last 5-6 games now.
Well, I thought in the 2 previous games to this, he really didn't have a chance to make a mistake. I mean, those are.
Give him one. He can find one. He can find ways. He can.
But I thought yesterday was a great example of a coach who, you can't fault his success. I think he's 45-19 in his tenure now as the Eagles coach, and he's doing something right. I also want to mention, Scott, the evolution of this offense. And I was watching Dan Orlovsky today on ESPN. He said something that I thought was interesting. The Eagles, when they scored that I believe it was their second touchdown, they went no huddle, and they stayed in it for about 4 or 5 straight plays, which limited Baltimore's ability to get other players on the field. And they saw the 2 linebacker looks, so they ran the ball a couple times to bring the linebackers up, and then they hit Brown on a cross, and then they scored the touchdown. To me, it looks like the entire Eagles offensive unit are starting to realize, number one, they're a running team first and foremost, and number two, they have tools in their arsenal that they can use to affect the play against a pretty good defensive team like Baltimore. Are you seeing the same kind of evolution that I am from the Eagles now?
I am. Of course, I don't get them all the time down here. We try to watch them as much as we can. But I think of course, they were missing one of their receivers yesterday.
Yeah, Devontae.
Brown, 1 or 2 of his catches were big plays in the game, short slants. But, yeah, I think the evolution of the running game, they got a great offensive line. We all know that. Center's starting to pick it up. They got probably the best running back in the NFL. I think they're getting better and better. That drive when they went down and scored the go-ahead to basically win the game was just an awesome drive. They just kind of controlled. Barkley ran the heck out of the ball, and I think they've evolved, and they're going to keep getting better. We hope.
Yeah, look at the numbers yesterday. Jalen Hurts, 11 for 19, 118 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. I was a little bit surprised at Jalen's inability to throw the ball downfield more against Baltimore, who doesn't have a really great pass defense. And maybe the fact that we were missing Devontae Smith had something to do with that. Saquon Barkley, who had a kind of a modest first half, only 45 yards rushing, he finished the game with 107 yards on the ground with a 4.7 average and 1 touchdown. And then A.J. Brown had 5 catches, none in the second half. Do you know how I know that, Mark?
You bet him to have,
because I bet him over 5.5 receptions, and I was counting my money. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I'll tell you mine later, and I'll
tell it now. There's a good spot for it.
I did one of those similar things where I did a parlay with 3. So I bet Jalen Hurts would score a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Had that one.
I bet that Barkley would go over 100 yards.
Had that one.
And then this is the one that my man from Coastal Carolina, Isaiah Likely scored a touchdown, and he did. But how many seconds to go? 3.
Oh wow!
He did.
So you rang the bell.
I rang the bell.
All right, lunch is on you the next time I see you. That's great. You know what else is exciting about the Eagles is that they're talented and they're deep, and I'll tell you why. No Darius Slay yesterday, and it didn't matter. No Brandon Graham yesterday. Nolan Smith comes up and raises his level of play, replacing Brandon Graham. Of course, Devontae Smith, we just talked about. He wasn't able to play yesterday. Didn't matter. Reed Blankenship goes out with a concussion. They bring in a kid, McCollum, who I'd never even heard of before. It plays great back there, makes a big play at the end of the game. So, it's just more evidence that this team is deep and they're talented and they're getting comfortable with each other. Scott, you're taking us for a tour around your house. What are you doing down there?
My phone is dying, so I had to go get a cord.
Go get a cord. Okay. Hey, we record this live, everybody. There's no editing. We're recording it Monday, by the way, the day after the game, which we like to do, so it's fresh. Hey, Mark, let's talk a little bit about the Eagles' defense. We got to re-sign Zach Baum to a big deal.
Oh yeah,
right? I mean, this kid every week, 13 tackles yesterday. Again, a half a sack. He's all over the field. Nakobe Dean, 10 tackles yesterday. Nolan Smith, 8 tackles and a sack. Jalen Carter is so disruptive back there. I was watching a thing that Brian Baldinger did this morning on Jalen Carter, and it's unbelievable. He is beating double teams and making plays in the backfield. He's disruptive back there. He's getting heat on the quarterback, making him uncomfortable. This defensive unit is really, really impressive under Vic Fangio, a guy that Scott knows well because he was a Stars assistant, as we've talked about.
No, the defense, and it's funny because I'll be honest. When the season began, I thought the offense would be good when you looked at the names, right? Barkley. I mean, we didn't know how good he was going to be, but you knew he was pretty darn good. He wasn't the second pick in the draft by mistake. I mean, the Giants just weren't very good, but he was. I've always liked Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's just the greatest quarterback ever, but I'm not one of them people that are down on him either. I like him more than most. So I was happy with the quarterbacks. 2 very good wide receivers in Brown and Smith, good tight end in Goddard, good offensive line. Why wouldn't this offense be good, right? There's no reason for it not to be good unless Nick screwed it up somehow. But he's letting Kellen Moore call it. So I was confident that the team would score a lot of points. I looked at the defense, and I know you told me Fangio would get him right. And the main thing that I thought Fangio would do, and he's done it. If you looked at last year's defense, especially when it started to fall apart, it was undisciplined. They blew assignments. Stupid penalties.
They didn't tackle well.
Nobody tackles well because nobody practices tackling anymore. They did a little bit.
They
more.
do now. They
did a little bit more. Right. He brought that old school mentality to the team, which is needed, I think. But I looked at the names. Zach Baum. I didn't know Zach. Nobody knew Zach Baum. He was a backup. He was a special teams player. I mean, he was basically a good special teams player who could go in and play a couple snaps for you on defense for his 4 years with the Saints. That's what he was, and that's what the Eagles thought he was. Remember? Vic said that in a press conference, and how he looked, said, hey, look at this guy Baum. I think he could be a good backup for us. And Vic said, no, I think he could start inside. So there you go. And he's having a great year. The rookies, now listen, both rookies were highly touted, Mitchell and DeJean. But you guys played the game, more than I even. Rookies don't always do it as a rookie. Sometimes it takes a year or two or more or never. Right, we've seen rookies come in with high hopes and they never pan out.
What do you think, Scott? I think a lot of times it's easier for rookies to play defense than it is offense because I think defense is a little more reactionary. They've got to know their schemes, and Vic Fangio certainly throws a lot at these young kids. But I do think, as far as an impact player is concerned, other than wide receiver on offense, I think defensively it might be a little bit easier to make an impact. Don't you?
I think so. Yeah. For some reason, even, first round receivers, a guy like Harrison out in Arizona, he's doing well, but he's not making an impact like some of these defensive guys. Absolutely not. I think the 2 guys you're talking about, the games that I've seen, they've made impacts. They're both darn good players. Mm-hmm. And, they're rookies. There a lot of times, like you said, you got first round draft choice, second round draft choices. It takes a year or 2 or 3 for them to really get to their skill level that's expected. But I think defense coming in, as long as understand the defense and what your role is and where you have to be when you have to be, it's a little easier for a guy to come in and be a rookie and make an impact.
Let's talk
The
a
thing
little
with
bit about.
Mitchell too, Ken,
Go
is that
ahead. Go ahead,
Mitchell,
Mark.
he didn't come out of Georgia or Alabama or Ohio
Toledo,
State.
the
East
hotbed of
Carolina or something.
Toledo.
So, I mean, I
Yeah,
really thought,
Toledo.
yeah.
while I liked the pick when they made it, I had him as one of my top two corners in the draft.
But I didn't know
I
him.
thought it would take, coming from a small school, I just assumed, and I was wrong. Because he came in, he's been good from day one, but I just thought, all right, this kid, he's a kid. He's played, he played in what, the MAC, is that what Toledo plays in? I don't know what league
No,
they
they
play.
really did their homework well.
So, I mean, no, he was considered a good pick. I mean,
Yeah.
but I just thought, and that's okay for a rookie to take time if he turns out to be great. Usually you don't rely on rookies to be impact players.
Well, I think you and I are on the same mindset. When you have a comfort level when you see a kid that comes from Georgia or Alabama or one of these, great football
Penn
schools
State.
because Penn State. Let's not forget number 3 in the country by the way,
You got
Scott.
it.
Penn
You got
State.
it.
We're gonna talk about Penn State near at the end, your Penn State career, but it was nice to see your coach, who gets maligned a little bit in the media, make a couple nice moves late in that game the week before, and then of course they crushed Maryland. By the way, I was following Scott on some chain that we're on, and he called that blowout. He said, "There's no way that Penn State will not beat Maryland by less than 25." So you were right.
That me?
Yeah, that was you.
Where did you see that?
Yeah, I saw
You're
it
right.
somewhere. I saw it might have been on the Stars chat that we're on. But I saw it somewhere.
Maryland scored, and typical. Nobody cares about what happens the first 5 seconds of the game.
Right.
And my immediate reaction: look, we'll win by at least 25. I guarantee it.
Oh, that might have been it. That might have been
Now I recall that. Yes.
Do me a favor, when you have a feeling like that, send it to me. I got a sports app. I could just plug that right in. And let's talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson. Incredible athlete as a quarterback. He was 23 for 36 yesterday, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also rushed for 79 yards. This guy is such a phenomenal athlete. It's got to drive coaches kind of crazy to be able to try to defend him, which I thought the Eagles did really well yesterday. But to me, there's something missing. There's a component, a little bit like McNabb. I don't know if the playoff thing, or coming up small in the playoffs all the time, or making the key throw at the right time. Mark, do you see that with Lamar Jackson? Or is there something just not clicking on all cylinders?
I'm with everything you said. I've been saying to friends and people all the time that great player. And like I don't play fantasy football, never have.
No, too much work.
I always tell people none of my fantasies involve football. but anyway, no, he does all the things you love him, right? And you watch him. He's fun to watch. But you're right. There's something. I'm not smart enough to figure out what it is. But you're right. There's something. He every year. He wins MVPs, and they're deserved.
Yeah,
because it's regular season MVP, right? So, he's not the guy. If I'm down 4, and I get the ball back with a minute 30 to go, there's about 5 or 6 quarterbacks I'd rather
no question.
And I hate to say it like that, but there just are. I'd rather have the kid in Buffalo out, Allen. I might rather have Jalen Hurts.
Well, here's a great example of what we're talking about. The stats for yesterday's game are a little bit surprising. They had they beat us in first downs 24-17. They beat us in net rushing 166 to 140, and they beat us in net passing 206 to 112. And other than that last touchdown, which was kind of meaningless, the Eagles dominated the last 3 quarters of the game. So there's an example of stats that get you MVP votes, but they don't translate to wins, which is exactly.
Although watch this year, I said this to a friend of mine I was watching a game with yesterday. He's just an NFL. He wasn't a fan of either team. He just likes football. He said, look at Baltimore. That's 5 losses. They're. I said, every year Baltimore gets the 1 or 2 seed, and they're picked to go to the Super Bowl, and they come up small. Yeah. I said, what? This year they'll sneak in as a 6 seed or a 7 seed, and they'll go further than they ever go, because you never know. The NFL is crazy, right?
That's the way it works, right? Hey, let's talk about the top teams in the league. I just put together a top list, and right now, I in the NFL, I still have Detroit as number 1, even though they struggle a little bit against the Bears. I still think they're the most complete team on both sides of the ball. I have the Eagles and Buffalo splitting the number 2 spot. I think the Eagles are right there knocking at the door, and Buffalo the same. I've got Kansas City at number 4. All they do is win. They're doing it kind of sloppy, and they're getting a little bit lucky, but they're winning ball games. And followed by Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. Scott, what do you think of how the NFL is shaping up, and do you see? Do you think it's going to be the Eagles-Detroit NFC Championship game?
I love to see it. Detroit's playing real well. They're a very good football team. They're going to continue to score a lot of points. I think the Bears game, it's a Thanksgiving game, and you never know what's going to happen.
It's a rivalry,
a rivalry.
Game. It doesn't surprise me it was close.
And every team has good players. It's. Yeah. I think the Eagles, if they can keep playing and keep getting better. I kind of agree that you never know what's going to happen with the Ravens. They haven't done well at the end of the year, but if Lamar gets real hot, I don't think he's a great passer still. Mm-hmm. But if it gets hot, they could be there. Kansas City, because of Patrick Mahomes, they just know how to win.
They do.
Yeah, it's ugly sometimes. It was ugly the other day, but they know how to win. I like the Steelers. They're playing really good, putting 40-some on the Bengals. Of course, Bengals D isn't real strong at this point.
So bad. I've never seen a better offense match with a worse defense.
The Bills are playing well. Of course, the Bills got blown out by the Ravens, I think, earlier in the year, if I recall. Mm-hmm. But whether it's snowing or not snowing, they're playing pretty well. So I see that group of 5 or 6 teams. The Vikings, they're a team that ends up 15-1 and can't win a playoff game. So Who knows what's going to happen there?
Well, listen, the Eagles got a game coming up that I think is the quintessential trap game, and that's Carolina. We're going to be home against Carolina after a big win against Baltimore, followed the following week. We're going to play Pittsburgh. I do believe that Carolina is a team that's improving, and hopefully the Eagles don't stumble. From a betting standpoint, I'm definitely taking the 12.5 points, everybody, if that's what you want to hear. And then we're at Washington, and then Dallas and the Giants at home. Scott, let's finish with a couple minutes left here with. Talk to me about your Penn State experience. You were part of those great Joe Paterno teams that you went to the national championship against Alabama. You played with our good friend Chuck Fusina, who was the runner-up to the Heisman Trophy at Penn State. And just what was your experience playing for Joe Paterno? And mention some of the great players that were on that Penn State teams that you played on, because it's really a who's who of football.
Yeah, well, it's really great to be part of the legacy and the Penn State legacy. You go up as a young kid and Joe Paterno recruits you and you're scared to death of Joe Paterno. But you go in with a lot of great athletes and probably the most important thing of it all, Joe, he taught us a lot about life. Be on time, obey your parents, do your schoolwork, if you're 15 minutes early, you're late, those type of things. And there's things that we've kind of followed the rest of our lives and we passed on to our families and our kids that, be a good person. And that's, as important as, being a really good football player and being a tough guy and stuff that Joe has taught you. And you go there and his whole plan is to, graduate you, what percentage go to the pros, very small percentage, graduate you and get you a good job and have a successful life. And 45 or however long it's been now, that's something that we never forget. And we get together a lot. We have a big tailgate where actually Chuck puts it on for us and guys get together. And I was telling my kids, I said, and even I coached high school football, and this is my last year. What I said to those guys, and this is something that I taught, that was taught in college, is look, we were in the playoffs. We went down and played a team in Baltimore City who's won the last 10 championships. I said, look, they're very good. Let's give it everything we have. We're very good. If we don't win, you'll never forget this game. You'll never forget playing in Baltimore City against one of the best teams in the area. And 40 years from now, you'll continue to talk about that. And they're the kind of things that we learned. being at Penn State. Of course,
Right.
Guys in my era, of course, Chuck Fusina, who was a great college player and led the Stars, to a couple championships, our good buddy. And gosh, we played with Matt Millen, Bruce Clark. I played with Matt Suey.
Amazing.
I don't. Bruce Clark could have been a really great player. He ended up going to Canada first, and I think he was an All-Pro with the Saints. But Mickey Scholler, great tight end. Paul Suey.
Who's the linebacker that played for the Skins that you?
Rich Malott.
Rich Malott was a great
Rich Malott was a great
player.
athlete. He was from Moon Township in Pittsburgh, PA, and he was a hurdle champion, a state hurdle champion. But what's funny about Rich Malott? He started for 7 or 8 or 9 years on a couple Super Bowl teams. He played every year. He played a different position. Paterno and his staff could not figure out where to play Rich Malott. He was a running back. He was a wide receiver. He was a DB. He was a lot. Yeah. Ends up playing 10 years as a Pro Bowl linebacker.
Well, Scott, you were a pretty good athlete too. You were a track guy, and I remember you were the punter at Penn State. A lot of people don't remember that, even though for some reason I was the backup punter with the Stars. I never quite understood that. I think they would have slipped you in there, God forbid if anything happened to Landetta. But
did you ever punt, Ken?
I did.
Yeah.
I never punted in a game, but I was pretty good. I mean, I used to go out with Landetta before every practice and shank it around a little bit. So, a little bit like
you know why I punted? I punted because Joe trusted me. I wasn't necessarily the best punter as far as
he knew you were going to catch the snap,
but I was going to catch it.
Yeah.
We kicked it high. We probably averaged 40 yards, and there were never returns.
Yeah, that's great.
And
stories.
He trusted me, and I tell people, I punted for 3 years also at Penn, and nobody can believe it.
I didn't know that.
It was pretty good. Hey, well, listen, this has been a great. The time goes by so quickly, and having a great friend like Scott Fitzkee with all these stories, it makes it go even faster. But we will be back next week, hopefully with a good report as the Eagles take on Carolina. I will be at the game, so I'm going to give you a face-to-face version of my impression of how that goes, and hopefully we'll be talking about another Eagles win. So for my good friend Mark Eckel and my ex-teammate Scott Fitzkee, this is Ken Dunek saying thanks for watching the Bird Brains with Ken and Mark, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.